I thought I knew my granddaughter. I thought I understood her silences. I was wrong on both counts. Her name is Lily. She turned 9 last March, and she has her mother's eyes and my late wife's stubbornness. I know that stubbornness well. I lived with it for 31 years, and I loved every difficult inch of it. When my wife, Barbara, passed 4 years ago, I thought that part of my life was just gone. Packed up. Stored somewhere I couldn't reach anymore. Then Lily came to stay with me for 2 weeks, and I found out stubbornness runs deeper than I thought. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My son's name is Gregory. He's 41, works in commercial real estate in Phoenix, and he married a woman named Sonia about 6 years ago. Sonia is the kind of person who fills every room she walks into. Loud laugh, expensive perfume, opinions about everything. I tried to like her, I genuinely did, for Gregory's sake. For Lily's sake. Lily is Gregory's daughter from his first marriage, to a quiet school teacher named Melanie who passed when Lily was 3. Car accident on the I-10. One of those things that makes no sense no matter how many times you try to arrange the facts in your head. After Melanie died, Gregory threw himself into work. Sonia came along about a year later. They got married fast, faster than I was comfortable with, but Gregory was grieving and lonely, and I wasn't about to tell a grown man how to live his life. Lily withdrew. The doctors called it selective mutism. That's what they told Gregory, and Gregory told me, and I looked it up on my computer one evening sitting at the kitchen table in my house in Tucson, Arizona, reading article after article until my eyes burned. Selective mutism is an anxiety disorder, mostly in children. They can speak. Physically, there is nothing wrong, but in certain situations, around certain people, the words just don't come. They get locked somewhere between the thought and the voice, and no amount of coaxing opens that lock. Lily spoke at home. I was told she talked to Gregory sometimes in the evenings when it was just the two of them. She talked to her school counselor, a woman she'd been seeing for 2 years. But around Sonia, around Sonia's friends, around most adults she didn't know well, nothing. Complete silence. She'd been this way for almost 4 years. I saw Lily at holidays, maybe twice a year. She'd sit beside me at the dinner table, and we'd have our own quiet conversations. I'd ask yes or no questions. She'd nod or shake her head, or sometimes write a word or two in a notepad I started keeping in my shirt pocket just for her. We had a system. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Gregory called me on a Tuesday in October. He sounded tired in a way that went beyond one bad night's sleep. "Dad, I have a situation. There's a deal closing in Dallas, and I have to be there for at least 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. Sonia's going to her sister's in Scottsdale. They've had this trip planned for months, and I don't want to pull her away from it." He paused. "Could Lily stay with you?" "Of course," I said. I didn't even hesitate. It's been a rough few weeks for her dad. The anxiety stuff. Just be patient with her. Gregory, it's Lily, of course. He dropped her off on a Friday afternoon. She had a rolling suitcase covered in stickers and a backpack shaped like a tortoise. She stood in my driveway looking up at the saguaro cactus in my front yard, the tall one that's been there longer than I've owned the house. And something in her face relaxed a little, like she recognized something. Gregory crouched down in front of her. He said some things quietly, things I wasn't meant to hear, and she nodded. He hugged her for a long time. Then he straightened up, shook my hand, and got back in his car. I looked at Lily. She looked at me. "You hungry?" I said. She thought about it. Nodded once. "I made chili," I said. She thought about it. Nodded once. "I made chili," I said. "Come on." That first weekend was easy, in the way that simple things are easy. We ate together, watched old westerns on cable, took walks in the evening when the desert heat settled down to something manageable. I dug out the notepad from my shirt pocket the first morning, and she gave me a look that might have been gratitude. She wrote, "Do you still have Grandma's bird feeder?" "Back patio," I said, "still gets visitors every morning." She smiled at that. It was a small smile, barely there, but I had learned years ago not to need more than what she gave. By the fourth day, she had started leaving me small notes around the house. Not responses to questions, just thoughts. I found one on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. The cactus ring came back, the one with the bent tail feather. I found another tucked under my reading glasses on the end table. I like how quiet it is here. I saved every one of them. On the fifth evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table going through some paperwork. I'm retired, 30 years as a civil engineer for the county. But retirement doesn't mean the paperwork stops. I had a folder open, my reading glasses on, a cup of coffee going cold beside me. Lily was at the other end of the table, drawing in a sketchbook she brought. She'd been drawing for about an hour without looking up. I noticed her stop. I didn't look up right away. I'd learned with Lily that looking up too fast was like a spotlight. It sometimes sent her back into herself. So I kept my eyes on the page in front of me and waited. The chair scraped. Small footsteps on the tile floor. She came and stood beside me. I looked up slowly, the way you'd look up if you heard something that might be a bird outside, but you weren't sure. She was holding her sketchbook to her chest. Her eyes were on the folder in front of me. I looked down at it. It was the folder Gregory had mailed me 3 weeks ago. He'd been helping me update some of my estate documents. Nothing dramatic, just making sure everything was in order. My house, my savings account, a desert community bank, the small pension I still collect. Gregory was listed as my primary contact, which had always seemed reasonable. There was a post-it note stuck to the top page in the folder. Gregory's handwriting. I'd read it when the envelope arrived. Dad, attorney says you need to sign page 3 and page 7. Just your signature and date. I'll file them when I'm back. I hadn't thought anything of it. Lily pointed at the folder. I watched her face. She opened her mouth, closed it. Her jaw tightened the way it does when she's fighting something. And then, and I will remember this for the rest of my life, she said, in a voice barely above a whisper, rough from years of being stored away, "Grandpa, don't sign that." I went completely still. She hadn't spoken a word to me in 4 years. Not one. Not a whisper. Not a murmur. Nothing. And now she was standing in my kitchen in Tucson, Arizona, pointing at a legal folder and telling me not to sign it. "Lily," I said very carefully, "what did you say?" Her hands gripped the sketchbook tighter. She looked frightened, not of me, I didn't think, but of what she'd just done. She'd broken some rules she'd kept for a very long time. "Don't sign it," she said again. Stronger this time. I heard them talking. "Who?" I said. "Who did you hear?" She swallowed hard. "Dad and Sonia, before I came here. I wasn't supposed to be awake." I set down my pen. I moved the folder to the side and turned in my chair so I was facing her, not the table. I kept my voice level, the same voice I used to use when Gregory was small and came to me with something that scared him. "Tell me what you heard," I said. "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." She sat down in the chair next to me. She put the sketchbook on the table. She didn't look at me while she talked. She looked at the sketchbook. But she talked. She told me she'd woken up in the middle of the night about 10 days before Gregory dropped her at my house. She'd gone to get a glass of water. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs because she could hear Gregory and Sonia in the kitchen, and something in the way their voices sounded. Low, careful, the way adults sound when they don't want to be heard, made her stop. She heard Sonia say my name. She heard Gregory say something about the house, about what it would be worth, about how if he was the only name on the accounts, the property transfer would be much simpler. She heard Sonia say, "He's 67, Gregory. He's not going to live forever. Why are we waiting?" She heard Gregory say, "He trusts me. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him." Lily sat very still at my kitchen table. Her voice had gone quiet again, but it wasn't the old quiet. It wasn't locked. It was just small, the way a voice gets when it's carrying something too heavy. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. "I was scared you wouldn't believe me." I looked at my granddaughter for a long moment. "I believe you," I said. "I meant it with everything I had. I did not touch that folder again that night." Instead, I made Lily and me cups of hot chocolate. The good kind, from a canister Barbara always kept in the back of the pantry, which I had been restocking quietly for 4 years out of habit. And we sat at the kitchen table for another hour. I didn't push her to say more. She'd said enough. She'd broken 4 years of silence to protect me, and I wasn't going to spend the next hour wringing every detail out of her. After she went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen, and I looked at that folder. I thought about Gregory. I thought about the way he'd hugged Lily in the driveway for a long time, like he meant it. I thought about the fact that he'd called me Dad on the phone and told me to be patient with her. I thought about Barbara, who had loved Gregory fiercely and forgiven him easily and who was not here to tell me what to do. Then I called my attorney. His name is Howard Briggs. He's been my attorney for 22 years, handled the closing on my house, handled Barbara's will. He's thorough and careful and deeply unimpressed by anyone, which is exactly what I needed. I called him at 8 the next morning. I'd been up since 5, and I read him the language on pages 3 and 7 of the folder. There was a pause on the line. "Robert," he said, "where did this document come from?" "My son sent it," I said. "He told me it was a routine estate update, that I just needed to sign a couple pages." Another pause. "This isn't routine," Howard said. "Page 3 is a durable power of attorney, broad form. It would give your son full authority over your financial accounts, real property, and medical decisions. Page 7 transfers the deed to your Tucson property into a joint tenancy arrangement with his name added. If you'd signed both pages, he could have legally liquidated your accounts and initiated a property sale without requiring your signature again." I sat with that for a moment. "He's my son," I said. Not as a defense of him, just as a fact I was trying to hold on to. "I understand," Howard said. "Would you like me to look at the full document?" "Yes," I said. "And Howard, I need you to tell me what my options are. All of them. I didn't tell Gregory anything, not yet. He called twice that week, once to check on Lily, once to ask if everything was all right. I told him everything was fine. I was calm. I have been a civil engineer for 30 years. I know how to read a load-bearing structure before you pull anything out." Lily and I fell into a routine. Mornings, she sat on the back patio and watched the bird feeder. The cactus wrens, the Gambel's quail, the occasional roadrunner that made her eyes go wide. Afternoons, she drew, or read, or helped me in the small vegetable garden I keep along the back fence. She talked to me a little more each day. Not a lot, not freely, but it was there, this small, steady stream that hadn't been there before. One afternoon, she was helping me water the tomato plants, and she said, without looking up, "Are you mad at my dad?" I considered the question honestly. "I'm hurt," I said. "Mad comes later, maybe. Right now I'm just trying to understand." She nodded. She seemed to accept that. "Are you scared?" she asked. "A little," I said. "Are you?" She thought about it for a long moment. "I was scared you'd think I was lying. Because I couldn't." She stopped, started again. "I thought if I told you and you didn't believe me, that would be worse than not saying anything." I set down the watering can. I looked at this 9-year-old girl who had carried this thing alone for 10 days, who had chosen to break 4 years of silence rather than let it sit silent any longer. "Lily," I said, "I want you to hear this. Whatever happens, I will always believe you. Do you understand me?" She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded, and the tension in her small shoulders went somewhere else. Howard moved quickly once he had the full document. He confirmed what he'd told me on the phone. Both pages were prepared to look like standard estate planning updates, but the language was precise in ways that mattered. Deliberately broad in the power of attorney. Deliberately structured in the deed transfer. This was not a careless mistake. Someone had known what they were doing. He also told me that in Arizona, there is a legal distinction between estate planning and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. He used that phrase carefully, vulnerable adult. And I understood he was being careful on purpose. I asked him to contact Gregory's attorney, formally, in writing. Gregory called me the following morning. His voice was different. The careful warmth was gone, replaced by something tight and clipped. "Dad." I got a letter from Howard Briggs. I know, I said. What is this? Why is your attorney contacting mine? Because I had the documents reviewed before I signed them, I said. And it turned out I should have. Silence on the line. Dad, it's a routine. Gregory, I said. Stop. He stopped. I know what was on those pages, I said. Howard explained it very clearly, and I know that you knew what was on those pages when you mailed them to me. More silence. This one longer. I don't know what Sonia told you, I said, or what she convinced you was a reasonable thing to do. But I need you to understand something. I am 67 years old. I built this house. I paid off this house. Barbara and I were married here for 31 years, and I scattered her ashes in the back garden, and I'm going to live here until I can't anymore. This house is not a transaction. Do you hear me? He didn't answer. And Lily is here, I said. Lily is in my house, and she is safe, and she is going to stay here until I decide otherwise. Not until you decide. Until I decide. Dad, I'm done talking on the phone, I said. Nein, Nahabchur. I hung up. I stood at my kitchen window for a while after that, looking out at the back garden, at the raised bed Barbara planted the summer before she got sick. The tomatoes were coming in, red and heavy on the vine. The bird feeder was turning slowly in the warm October wind. Lily came into the kitchen. She looked at my face. Did you talk to him? She said. Yes, I said. What happens now? Now, I said. Howard handles it. And you and I are going to make dinner. She seemed to find that acceptable. Howard filed a formal complaint with the Arizona Adult Protective Services and simultaneously sent a letter to Gregory's attorney outlining the specific legal concerns with the document. He was thorough and specific and left no room for the word misunderstanding. Gregory retained his own attorney within 48 hours, which told me everything I needed to know about whether it had actually been a misunderstanding. What followed was 3 months of legal process that I am not going to walk through in detail because most of it was tedious and exhausting and conducted in offices with bad fluorescent lighting. What I will tell you is what mattered. Gregory and Sonia had been underwater financially for almost 2 years. A commercial deal Gregory had personally guaranteed had collapsed and left him exposed for close to $400,000. He hadn't told me. He'd told Sonia he would handle it, and Sonia had suggested, in the way Sonia apparently suggests things, that his elderly father's home in Tucson was sitting there, paid off, worth close to $800,000 in the current market, and that there were ways to approach that situation if Gregory was smart about it. He was not smart about it. He was desperate and scared, and he let Sonia lead him somewhere that a man with better footing would have turned away from. I don't say that to excuse him. I say it to explain how a person I loved could become someone capable of this. Desperation is not an excuse, but it is sometimes an explanation. Sonia was, it turned out, the primary architect. Her fingerprints were on the document. She had a background in property management and understood title transfers well enough to structure what Gregory had sent me. She was less remorseful than Gregory when it all came out. Gregory, when I finally met with him in Howard's office in December, looked like a man who had not slept properly in months. He sat across the table from me, and he didn't make excuses, and he didn't cry, which I think took something out of him. He just said, "Dad, I don't know how to explain what I was thinking because I don't think I was thinking. I looked at my son, my only son, the boy I taught to ride a bike in the parking lot of a Kmart in 1991. You're going to get help," I said. Real help. A therapist, a financial counselor, whatever it takes. And you are going to stay away from my house until I trust you again. And I don't know when that will be. He nodded. Sonia is not welcome in my life. That's not negotiable. He nodded again. And Lily, I said. Lily is your daughter and she needs her father, but she also needs to know that the adults around her are safe. So you figure out what that looks like and you do it. Not for me, for her. The legal matter was settled with Gregory signing a formal relinquishment of any current claim to my property and accounts, and both he and Sonia signing a consent agreement with APS. No criminal charges were filed. Howard said the window for that was narrow given the document had never been signed, and I agreed with his assessment. I wanted it over. I wanted it documented. I wanted it documented. I wanted it on record, but I did not want to spend years in criminal court watching my son be prosecuted. I am 67. I have better things to do with my time. Gregory and Sonia separated 3 weeks after the settlement. She filed first. I found out from Gregory's cousin, not from Gregory, which I think says something about where he was in those months. Not covering for her, just too hollowed out to have a conversation about it. Lily went back to Phoenix in November. Gregory was there, and her school, and her counselor. She was quieter at the airport than she'd been the last few weeks at my house. She stood next to me at the gate, and I crouched down to say goodbye, and she grabbed me around the neck and held on hard. "Thank you for believing me," she said. Into my shoulder, muffled by my jacket. "Thank you for telling me," I said. She pulled back and looked at me. Her eyes were dry. She was a serious kid, Lily. Serious in the way that children are when they've had to be. "I'm going to keep talking," she said. I decided. "Good," I said. "I'll keep listening." She picked up her tortoise backpack and walked down the jetway without looking back. That's Barbara's stubbornness right there. You go when you go. You don't make a production of it. It is now 8 months later. Gregory is in counseling. He told me this himself, on the phone, in January, in a conversation that was short and careful, and nothing like the conversations I used to have with him, but was honest, in a way that mattered. He's working with a financial advisor to address the debt. He's rebuilding slowly, the way things get rebuilt when the damage is real. Lily calls me on Sunday evenings. Not every Sunday, sometimes every other. She talks about school, about her friends, about the mockingbird that has taken up residence in the tree outside her bedroom window and sings at 3 a.m. and drives her crazy. She told me last month that she'd spoken up in class for the first time. Just answered a question the teacher asked out loud in front of everyone. It wasn't a big deal, she told me, except I guess it kinda was. I have a photo of her now on my refrigerator. Gregory sent it from her school picture day. Red sweater, crooked smile, hair that didn't stay where it was supposed to. I look at it every morning when I get my coffee. The cactus wren with the bent tail feather is back this fall. I noticed it last week, landing on the feeder at 7 a.m, same as always. I thought about texting Lily about it, then I thought I'd wait and tell her on Sunday so we'd have something to talk about. I am 67 years old. I have a paid-off house in Tucson and a small pension and a garden with good tomatoes. I have a son. I am learning, slowly, how to trust again. And I have a granddaughter who broke 4 years of silence to say 2 words to me in a kitchen on a Tuesday evening in October. Don't sign. 2 words. That's all it took. I've been an engineer my whole life. I know what it means when a structure holds. I know what it looks like when something small bears a load it was never supposed to have to bear. Lily bore that load alone for 10 days, 9 years old. She carried it all the way to Tucson and set it down in front of me. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure she never has to carry something like that alone again. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it actually costs a person to speak up. Not the kind of speaking up that's easy. Not correcting someone's order at a restaurant, or disagreeing with a coworker in a meeting. I mean the kind where you've been silent for a long time, where silence has become the safest thing you know, and you choose to break it anyway because something matters more than your own protection. That's a different thing entirely. That takes something most adults I know couldn't summon on their best day. Lily was 9 years old when she did it. She carried what she knew for 10 days. 10 days of sitting across from her father, being driven to school, eating dinner, going to bed, knowing what she knew and saying nothing, not because she didn't care, but because she was calculating the way children sometimes do when the adults around them have made the world feel unreliable. She was weighing the cost. She was asking herself, if I say this and he doesn't believe me, what do I have left? That's not a question a 9-year-old should have to answer. But she answered it. And she got it right. I think about cause and effect a lot, not in any mystical sense, just in the plain mechanical way that one thing leads to another, and we are all constantly setting things in motion without fully understanding what we're starting. Gregory made choices driven by fear and financial desperation, and those choices set something in motion that he couldn't control once it started. Sonia made choices driven by calculation, and those choices eventually came apart in the specific way that calculated things do when they meet someone who simply refuses to go along. I made a choice, years ago, to build a relationship with a quiet little girl through notepads and yes or no questions and patience. And that choice came back to me in the form of 2 whispered words in a kitchen in October. None of it was random. None of it was luck. What stays with me most isn't the legal process or the settlement or even Gregory's face across that conference table. What stays with me is the question Lily asked me in the garden while we were watering the tomatoes. Are you scared? And I told her the truth. A little, yes. And then she asked something braver. I thought if you didn't believe me, that would be worse than not saying anything. She had done the ethical math herself. She had weighed staying silent against speaking up and decided that protecting someone she loved was worth the risk of not being believed. That's not instinct. That's character. Character that nobody handed her. Character she built quietly in the years when she wasn't speaking, when she was watching and learning and deciding what kind of person she wanted to be. I'm 67 years old and I learned something from a 9-year-old this past year. I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision that something else is more important than the fear. Lily was afraid. She spoke anyway. And in doing so, she didn't just protect me, she protected herself. She proved to herself that her voice had weight, that the people who deserved her trust would honor it. That's the thing about integrity. It compounds. You do the right thing once, at cost, and it makes it slightly easier to do the right thing again. Lily is talking more now, not because the anxiety disappeared, but because she has evidence, real, lived evidence, that speaking can lead somewhere good. I think about that every Sunday evening when she calls.